You're watching PowerNation.
Today on Music City Trucks, we get our black beast of an OBS back in the shop, all painted and powder coated.
We get an ultra high performance brake kit installed, and then I'll address the fuel system that'll feed our thirsty big block.
And then we'll wrap it all up by installing our radiator and cooling fans to keep this 632 nice and cool. So stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to Music City Trucks. Well, as you can see, we've been making quite a bit of progress on our Project 632 SS build. We've got all our sheet metal and our black satin paint, and we got this piece of eye candy sitting right here. Now, if you remember the last time you saw this, it was a little more rust colored, but we took this over to our friends from Blast from the Past, and they put this beautiful silver metallic powder coat on it. They immediately got the chassis off the trailer and into the sandblast booth and stripped down that 30+ years of grime and rust that was sitting on this chassis. They then moved it over to the powder coat side of things and sprayed this beautiful Bengal silver metallic that you see here. And as you can see, this thing turned out absolutely beautiful. It's really gonna pop when we get that satin black body down on the chassis. Now, we've already got our Ride Tech suspension installed in it. We've showed you how to do it. We have a few more things to do, and that's gonna start with the brakes.
Yeah, now for the brake system, we reached out to our friends at Baer Brakes, and they hooked us up with this 14-inch Extreme Plus package. It's got 6 piston calipers on all 4 corners. Now, to get this installed, first thing we gotta do is start with this axle and axle seal. Now, we already showed you our rear axle housing here from Quick Performance. They also sent us these axle shafts. Now, these are 35 spline axles that they've matched up with our power level. And you can also custom order your links. And I actually made this housing about 1 inch narrower than stock so we can get the biggest tire possible between our control arm and that fender on the bed there. So I put a little assembly lube on our seal, on our splines, and down here on the bearing. Now we just gotta slide it in. That. All right, let's get the rest of those brakes on there. All right, our next piece is the parking brake assembly, which also doubles as the bearing retainer. We just got to get this shoe off here, set that down, and this is going to slide up on the back side and retain that bearing. I also like to put a little bit of silicone for an extra step or an extra level of protection there to keep it from leaking out. Now this plate just slides up. This little opening here allows us to go up over the axle shaft. Right up over here. Take our T-bolts from the back, put some thread locker, red thread locker, along with a lock washer. Make sure she don't come out. The neat thing about these axles here, this opening, if you're concerned, what's that big hole for? Well, that gives us access to tighten up these nuts for these retaining bolts. I'll run these down, get them snug, and all I have to do is spin this around to the next one. Just tighten them all down. We're gonna tighten them to 30 foot-pounds. Get my torque wrench here once we snug these up. Now we'll torque them all down. Click. Click. Now we can get our parking brake shoe on here. And this just slides boop, boop, right over that axle flange there. Just got to make sure you get the ends of that shoe down into the adjuster in the bottom. Blue thread locker, because that's going into aluminum. That's kind of my little judge on strengthness there with the colors. 2 screws in there, and that would be installed. Now we're going to torque them down to 120 inch-pounds. All right. So now's a good time just to double check all your clearances between the flange, the wheel studs, the T-bolts. Make sure that there's nothing hitting because you got a lot of custom pieces here. So, yep, all that clears. Our shoe is centered. Move on to the next step. This intermediate bracket here, this gives you a chance to customize your braking system. Ours is going to be set up for a trailing. Now, a leading brake system, the caliper would be mounted up front. Ours is going to be mounted to the back. And they also have a few different provisions where if you wanted to clock it at a different angle. We're just going to go with the old 90-degree kind of 9 o'clock position there. Now, right now, we're just going to tighten these up by hand, get them snug, because we got to make some adjustments to this position for shimming. I'll show you a little bit later. All right, next is our brake rotors. Well, this one right here, it's 14 inches in diameter. And anytime you can increase the diameter of your brake rotor, well, it gives you more leverage, more stopping power there. All right, put some lug nuts on here to keep that thing flush as we adjust the calipers. All right, next piece is our calipers. Now, this is the heart of the system here. 6-piston caliper. It's machined out of one piece of aluminum. That gives it all the strength and rigidity compared to a lot of stock setup. So we got to get this on here, and then we got to measure for some shims to get it centered with the rotor. Just so you know your caliper's installed the right direction, make sure your bleeder screws are facing up. Now, to center our rotor and the calipers, you can see the difference, the gap right here. Well, we've got these shims that we have to install between our intermediate plate. We'll take our calipers here, take that measurement. We've got 905, and then on this side, we've got 830. We'll subtract those two, divide it in half, and then that'll tell us the amount of shim to move this back and forth. Okay, so we measured at the top of the caliper and at the bottom of the caliper on both sides of the rotor, and the difference was 70 thousandths. So we take that 70 divided by 2, it gives us 35 thousandths. That means 2 of these little shims comes out to 32 thousandths, and that's within our 5 thou window that they're looking for. We'll get these shims installed between the intermediate plate and that backing plate, and we can put the brake pads in and button it up.
Up next, we add some new suspension components and finish our brakes.
Then we install the high volume fuel system, letting the juice flow to our big block Chevy.
Well, Mike's been busy finishing up the rear. I've been working on the front. Now, with this Ride Tech kit and the 14-inch rotors and the 6-piston Baer brakes that we're running, their spindle that they send with the kit isn't going to work for us. So what we did is we called up AZ Pro Performance and got one of their React 2-inch modular drop spindles, and that allows us to run this Baer setup. We also installed a speed sensor up here that we're gonna touch base on a little bit later. And then to get us steering in the right direction, we're gonna replace our steering components up front here. The first thing we started with was this turnbuckle from Ride Tech. Now, they don't send this in the kit. That's something you're gonna have to buy extra because they want you to utilize your factory steering components. Ours are in pretty bad shape, so we're gonna go ahead and replace that. The next thing we're gonna replace are these tie rod ends from Duralast. Now, these Duralast tie rod ends, they're built to meet or exceed OEM quality fit, form, and function, and they're a real nice piece. It's gonna really tighten up the steering. So let's go ahead and get this installed. Now, Duralast thoroughly tests all their components to give you extreme longevity and performance, and these tie rod ends are no exception, and that's why we're putting them on the truck. And then the only thing that we're gonna have left to do after this, get the rotor, get the caliper on, and then we're gonna be able to mount up the wheels and tires and get this thing down on the ground. All right, we'll get this last nut torqued up, and this front end's gonna be ready to rip. I think it's about time we get some wheels and tires on this bad boy.
Yeah, for the wheels, we reached out to Summit Racing, and they sent us this US Mag wheel. It's a kind of a tribute to the 454 SS wheel back in the day. That wasn't a 15-inch, this is in a 20-inch. And we wrapped it in these Continental Extreme Contact Sport 02s. That is an ultra high-performance summer tire and gives you great traction whether it's dry or wet. And that'll be perfect for our application here, whether it's on the track or on the street. So let's get them wrapped up, put them on the truck, and have us a roller. This tire comes complete with Sport Plus technology, which provides track-proven performance and extended tread life. Now, before we can drop the bed onto our chassis, we've got to finish up our fuel system, and that starts with our fuel pump. Now this one right here is from Holley. It's a 525 liter per hour unit that will support over 1,200 horsepower on a fuel injected system. This kit comes for a variety of fuel tank depths. So what we have to do is measure our fuel tank, and we have to trim our supply hose, the return hose, and the mounting bracket so we can get it at the right spot in the tank. Looks like 9 3/4 the top of the tank. Now, once you've got your tank depth measurement, refer to Holley's instructions to let you know how much you need to cut off your tubes here. For us, well, it's 2 1/4 inches. So I'll pull out my tape measure, we'll mark it right there, and that's where we'll make our cut. Now, both your supply and your return hose get cut at the same length. Next, we need to trim our fuel mount bracket. We'll take that over to the bandsaw. The fuel pump mounting bracket has a different measurement than the tubes. Refer to your instructions and know how much you need to cut off. Ours is 1 1/4 inches. Now, with our pieces trimmed up, we just got to put it together. Gasket off here. Slide that into there. All right, now we'll get our pump installed. Slide it over the barb and tighten up our clamp. Now with our hose clamps installed, along with the hydromat on the bottom of the pump, we just gotta get it in the tank. We'll finish tightening them up by torquing them to 60 inch-pounds. Going a star pattern here. Now with the fuel pump installed, we've got a couple of more components in our fuel system, the fuel filter and the fuel pressure regulator. Now this is gonna be mounted up on the firewall real close to the engine, so we'll get to that later. So now we're gonna get the fuel filter. I'm thinking we're gonna install it somewhere in this general area. All right, so I just whipped up a little bracket, mount our fuel filter to. Now I've got to put it on the frame. We'll attach it to the frame using these ARP Fasteners. Well, we got our 10 micron filter installed. We got the pump in the tank. Now we just got to connect everything. We like to use Earls for their fittings and their hose to get the job done.
Hey, Mike, this thing's all welded up. Where do you want me to put it?
On the truck.
Well, I guess we got to put the motor in it, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
That might help.
Coming up, we convert our brakes to a manual setup, then add that manly third pedal, making driving our sport truck a little more spicy.
Hey guys, welcome back. Well, as you can see, we've come a long way on this 632 SS chassis. We've got the engine and trans in its final spot. We've got our exhaust hung, and we ran our fuel and brake lines. Now we have one more thing left to do, and that's install the drive shaft.
Yeah, so we sent all of our specs down to Chattanooga Driveline, and this is what they sent us. It's a 4-inch diameter steel tube drive shaft. That's gonna be strong enough to handle all the horsepower that that engine's making. So now we just gotta get it installed. In the cup.
She's home.
Okay. There we go. Now that our chassis is a roller, we can get it underneath the cab, lower it down, and then get the bed back on it so it looks like a truck again. All right, now that we've got the bed and the cab installed, we can wrap up the clutch and brake system on the truck. For our brake master cylinder, we're going with this unit from Baer. Now it's matched with the rest of our brake system with the calipers as well. And we're gonna ditch that power brake booster. We're getting rid of that ugly thing off that firewall, and we're going with manual brakes. You may be thinking, why would you wanna go with manual brakes? Well, when you properly engineer the entire brake system, you'll get a great pedal feel. And what they do is they'll engineer the size of your calipers along with the bore here of the master cylinder to get you that great pedal effort there, and it'll look nice on that firewall. So now we just gotta bleed this thing on the bench and get it hung on that firewall. All right, get it on the truck. All right, got that on there. Anthony's gonna make us some hard lines to connect the two. Now I'm gonna jump inside and work on the clutch pedal. Okay, now we showed you the manual transmission that we're going with from American Powertrain, but they also sent us this clutch pedal and master cylinder setup that bolts right in to these trucks. Now, like I said, it's got the master cylinder attached, and they've got all the geometry laid out, engineered perfectly, and it just sandwiches the factory bracket. Now we just got to bolt it in place. All right, well now that we got the clutch pedal master cylinder installed, it shows another issue, the clearance between the clutch pedal and the brake pedal, because this one was for an automatic transmission. They're typically a bit wider. So we're gonna take this brake arm out, trim that pedal down a little bit, re-drill the pivot point for the push rod that goes in the master cylinder, and that's gonna wrap up this installation.
We cracked the case on how to keep our 632 super chill by adding a new aluminum radiator and a dual fan setup. All right, while Mike's finishing up our master cylinder install, I'm gonna move forward and get our radiator mounted up. Now we went to Cold Case Products for this, and it's 100% TIG-welded, polished aluminum piece, and it's made to fit any 88 through 98 GM pickup truck. There's a couple steps you gotta do before you can get it in the truck, and that first step is mounting these fans on this shroud. So let's go ahead and show you how to do that. All right, so now that we got that blue wrap off of it, we can go ahead and get these mocked up. Now they give you four rib nuts per side already mounted in the shroud. It'll give you a bunch of different ways you can clock these. We're gonna go ahead and get these so the wires point in the middle, clock down. That way we can run them with the frame rails and be tucked up nice and tight, get it out of the way. So let's go ahead. First step's gonna get these clips. You slide them down into these little receiving areas. There's 4 per fan. All right, now that we got all the clips in, we can start running some bolts down to it. Now they also send you a complete wiring kit that comes with it. It comes with a relay and then a thermostatically controlled switch that already has a bung welded into the radiator. Now we're not gonna be using that switch since we're running the Terminator X system, and that's gonna control our fans. But if you were to use this, it would have the fans turn on at about 190 degrees. And it makes it real nice that you already have that option to be able to run that. Some of them are a little tight, so you may have to tug on it in one direction or another to get them to go, but so far they're all in. All right, we'll get this last one snugged up and she's ready to mount on the radiator. And when you're mounting it, you gotta make sure that you're mounting it on the right side. These fans are gonna pull, not push, so we gotta put it on the back side of the radiator, which is this side. All right, so we're gonna use bolts in this case. They have slots here on these top rails and the bottom one, so go ahead and just slap those in there. All right, this thing's all snugged up. It's ready to drop in the truck. All right, see what we're looking like here. Now we're utilizing the factory lower radiator rubbers. Now these trucks originally came with a mechanical fan setup that included a radiator shroud that also served as the top mount. We're not running that anymore, so I whipped up this quick bracket. It's gonna go ahead and lock this radiator nice and tight, and it's gonna clean up the top of the core support. Let's go ahead and drop this thing in here.
Perfect.
That looks pretty nice.
Yeah, when it comes to that radiator, I think that's case closed. You know, we got a lot done today, but we're so close to firing this thing
Yeah,
up.
I can't wait to hear this beast. It's gonna be nasty.
We'll get to that next time on Music City Trucks. I think for the hoses, we'll have to come off this way for upper hose like that.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to paint this, I think.
Definitely paint it.
Might help.